When you have a child that's diagnosed with a catastrophic long-term illness, the first thing after the shock of that diagnosis wears off is why.
From 1953 to 1987, the water supply at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina, was contaminated by over 70 chemicals. This contamination caused a host of deadly illnesses.
My daughter Janie was the only one of my 4 daughters to have been conceived, carried, or born while we lived on base housing at Camp Lejeune. It was right after we got back down there and Janie got re-exposed to the contaminants in the water. And then finally, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And Janie was being followed at the Naval Hospital aboard Camp Lejeune and Duke University. And that is where Janie subsequently passed away. She was diagnosed in 1983. She passed away on 24 September 1985.
That for me, for most of my life, I mean, that was it for Camp Lejeune. I spent the whole gestation period at Camp Lejeune and the first 4 months of my life there. Got married, had 4 kids, living my, average Joe American life. And then all of a sudden one day, my now ex-wife gives me a hug and she felt a bump in my chest. And, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I've never done drugs, and there's no history of breast cancer in my family anywhere. And I went to the doctor. He didn't like it and told me that I had to have a mammogram. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to send you for a mammogram. And I'm like, well, can men even get mammograms? And he said, well, yeah, they can. And so he wrote up an order to have me have a mammogram. And that's when everything changed. In the space of like 2 weeks, I went from being what I thought was a normal 39-year-old male to, oh, you have breast cancer.
Late August of 1997, I came walking into the living room with a plate of spaghetti to sit down and watch the evening news. And when I walked in the living room, the reporter that was on the TV screen said that ATSDR wants to conduct some follow-on studies on the children who were conceived, carried, or born at Camp Lejeune during the period of time when the water was contaminated. And they wanted to study these children for birth defects and childhood cancers. I dropped my plate of spaghetti on the living room floor.
I was diagnosed on April 25th, 2007. My surgery was, I think, May 6th, like a couple of weeks later. And then when I was coming out of the doctor's office for a follow-up visit, because they had to drain fluid from all the trauma in my body and everything, I got a phone call from my father. I said, well, what's going on, Dad? And he goes, you need to go home and turn on CNN right now. And I'm like, what's going on? And he says, it's about Camp Lejeune. You need to go turn on CNN right now. So I went home and turned on the TV, and it was at the top of the hour. The lead story was about a hearing that was taking place in Washington, D.C. about Camp Lejeune. And in that story, a man named Jerry Ensminger was testifying how the children who were born between 1968 and 1985 were being studied for their effects to toxic chemicals found in the drinking water aboard the base at Camp Lejeune. I about passed out. I knew right then and there what happened to me.
In 2007, Jerry and Mike began working together to illuminate the experiences of those affected by the water contamination at Camp Lejeune. Together, they have fought to seek relief for those affected. In 2012, Congress passed the Janie Ensminger Act, which provides medical expenses to qualifying victims.
We had the Janie Ensminger Act that got passed in 2012. Mike and I were at the signing ceremony for that at the Oval Office with President Obama. I have my presidential pen right there. And this is the first pen he used in the signing of the bill named after my daughter. And I use this once a year. I used it the other day. I use it to vote.
In 2022, Congress passed the Honoring Our Pact Act, which recognized a federal cause of action for qualifying individuals affected by water contamination at Camp Lejeune to file claims with the Department of the Navy, and if those claims are rejected or left undecided after 6 months, seek relief in federal court. Unfortunately, 2 years after passage, few victims have seen meaningful relief. Jessie Hoerman, the granddaughter of a Marine who died of cancer in 1976 after exposure to Camp Lejeune's contaminated water supply, explains the elective settlement framework put forth by the government in these acts.
So it starts at 30 days if you were there 30 days or more, because you have to be there 30 days or more, but less than a year. I think it's $150,000. And then it goes up, if you're over a year, it goes up to $250,000. And then the last one is if you've been there over 5 years. That's the highest one, and I believe that's $350,000. They then add $100,000 as a death benefit, which I don't understand.
We're still fighting for justice, and we're still kind of being strung out. And the Federal Tort Claims Act is a big part of this, because in the end, the government has deep pockets. There is no incentive to try to bring this to an end, which you see in the normal civil courts. And there's every incentive to just slow roll it, deny, delay, and keep this going as long as they can. And eventually, we'll all be dead. And the sad part about this is that the leadership of the Marine Corps at one point decided that the institution was more important than the people who comprised the Marine Corps, meaning the Marines, the Navy personnel, and their families. And they made a choice to cover this up.
Well, they're trying to wiggle out of the justice as hard as they can, but, time will tell. You've heard the term, I'm sure, that the wheels of justice turn exceedingly slow, but they grind exceedingly fine.